So let's look at some code and go over it. All right, so can everybody see the? Can everybody see that just fine? I can make it bigger if we need. All right, so obviously you see we're importing the unit test and we're importing the WebDriver, and there are some more features that I'm not going to be using, but keys and selector, and it's a lot simpler than you would really imagine. There's not a whole lot to navigating the website. Like, there's a lot to a website, but you kind of access it through XPath and stuff like that, so I'll show you all that stuff. So then we go down and we do our setup, and in our setup we're creating a WebDriver. Now it has the capability of testing with multiple web browsers. All right. So since I'm just using the API, you can do a WebDriver like this, and you can say Firefox, Chrome, Opera. You could do the Edge browser for Microsoft or whatever. I'm on a Linux machine, so I'm going to be using Chrome mostly. Firefox was working until the very last test I created, and then it breaks now. It doesn't shut down the driver, so it doesn't pass my tests. But I don't want to keep up that with you guys. Yeah,
not daily, but almost weekly, and so you have to update that software all the time.
Yeah, and you can use the Firefox. They have like a bug tracking error, bug engine, or I don't remember what it's called exactly, but you can use that. And I think you'd have better success at doing this with that than using your just installed Firefox browser like I am right here. And then there's a server one, and it's a Java. There's a Java program that does this. It's the server, and to get it to work better, I used that, and that's what you see here. Is I'm actually connecting to a server that's actually running on my machine, a Java server that's running on my machine at that address. So I'm actually going to connect to that, which is actually going to drive connecting to the website. So then here's our first test. So we instantiate our driver and we get our website. Now I'm going to be using the Firestorm website that we've been developing for our group here. That's why I'm on localhost here. I have a Django website running, just the Firestorm site on this test server, so that's the port and everything. You could do like, google.com if you wanted, and test searching things on Google if you wanted. But I mean, it's literally just a URL. So then this here, we're going to test for login in the driver in the title of the page. All right, so that's how you test that. And we're just doing assert and assert in if there's that. Then we're going to find an email. So maybe we'll pull up the web page here. So if we look at our web page, there's certain elements on here, right? New logo. First thing we're going to hit on this particular web page is.
You can't do that, Dave.
Can't log out. Server not running.
I don't know if the logout button works.
Apparently.
Database is locked.
Oh, you know why it's locked? Kind of was.
Do you have a terminal session open?
Sorry.
I always do that, so I'm like, alright.
There we go. Okay. So here's the first web page, right? So what we want to do is we want to find this box here. We want to test this box, right? So how are we going to get to this box through our code? Well, it's easy enough. You create your variable, and you call this driver. You call your driver, and you say find by element name, and you say email. So if we look here at our source, that might be hard to see because it's really small. But here, whoever made this was nice enough to give us a nice name of email, so we can find it by name. You can also find by IDs. You can find by, in text areas, you can find by text, things like that, if you wanted. You can also find by XPath, which is how the browser finds elements on the site. So that's going to give us this email object, and then we're going to try to send keys to it. So that's where this import keys comes from, and then we send our keys, and we're going to send a name, and then we're going to send a return. Right, and then we're going to test the title again to see if we're on the user page. right? And then we're gonna make sure that it says hello, the username that we put in there, just to make sure that what happened, when we logged in, that's what really happened. So to test it manually, you log in, you say, okay, well, look, my name's there and my title is user page now, right? So that's what it's going to do. Let me run it. You want to see it run, or you want to go on to the next test real quick? You want to run it? All right.
Always see if hello world actually prints.
So there, you saw it pop up there, and you're doing all the tests, and it goes and completes. Round 2 tests,
Very
3
cool.
seconds. When I use Firefox, it takes about 8 seconds, and then dies.
Mm-hmm.
But it only did that until the last test. Anyway, so that was
If you
obviously.
run Windows Explorer, it takes forever.
I don't know. I didn't try that one because I'm on a Linux machine. But so you saw that it popped up and it tested out. It tests our navigation just the way that we did it, right? So we'll go on to the next one. And the next one, we saw that form, right? We have this form of adding a new subject. Well, how do we do that, right? How are we going to test this form? That's what our next test is. So our test here is, we're going to test the user page form. So we create our driver, connect to our website. We're going to need to log in again, right? So we do that part. And this is the example of the thing where using a class or page object would be handy, because then I could just call that, automatically log itself in without having to do this every time, right? Then we're going to make sure that we're on the right page. We're finding this text on the page. If we look at our page, that text is right here. So it's just making sure that's loaded. And it is smart enough to know when the page loads. If there is a lot of JavaScript going on though, it sometimes can fail, or it won't load completely before it does it. So there are some waits you can do if you had a page that had a lot of stuff. Everything we're doing does not a big problem there. Alright, so first we need to find the subject box, right? So we have a subject box, a URL box, a description box, and a depth select box, and a submit button, right? We can show you all the code there. So we're just going to use the find by name, because nice names were supplied for us, and we're just going to send keys to it. That's all we're going to do. So we don't instantiate an object there, or a reference to it. Here I did just to show you that you can do that also if you wanted, and then you can use that variable later if you want it or not. Here we're finding another driver. We're finding the description box, and we're saying teach us more than Brett could, please, because we're adding a new subject to our site, and we want to make it an expert. So we're taking so next we're going to go to the select box. Now you can find the select box the same way and interface it, and you can do a for loop and go through all and check your boxes. But the Selenium API has a select object you can inherit or import that allows you to basically you can select it by value. So if you know your values, you can select it there. You can uncheck and check things. You don't have to go through the loop and find the ones you want and select them. You can also take screenshots. So we'll take a screenshot of that before we submit it. And then the last one was that submit button, right? Well, on this site, our developers were very unkind to us on this one. So we find our form.
An input at the bottom. There. Up. There.
That one. There's the select box. Now you see the problem with this one is there's no name, right? There's no name, there's no ID. How are we supposed to find
You're
this
supposed
button?
to submit a pull request to put an ID or a name in there.
But I didn't, to show you a different way of doing it. So XPath is a thing you can do also. So you can find an element by XPath. So here we're saying we want the second input box on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem with XPath is if something changes on the page, you add another input box. This could now break, right? So
Can't you also say something like, give me the input that has the type submit?
yes, you could do that also.
And that would be a little more robust.
It would be a little more robust. You can specify exactly where you want to be, but if any of that hierarchy changes, you can be off. And it's using the XPath that the browser itself is using. So whether it's XPath 2.5 or whatever it is, I don't remember the exact one. Chrome's using that, but if you're using like Internet Explorer, things like that, you'll just be stuck with the XPath one, because that's actually it's using the XPath of the browser itself. So, and this is just a relative path here, input 1 or input 2. It's not 0 based, so the very first one is 1 and the second one is 2. So if you try 0, you won't find anything and it will break. And then we hit this click button. We click that button, right? And then our teardown is where we just close everything, right? So those are the two tests that we have, and that's what we'll see when we run it. So now if we run it again, that's what the second time pops up. For this time is the first one just testing that first login, and this one's testing that form submission. So now we technically run that set of tests twice. So if we refresh our page here, we're probably going to see 2 Seleniums in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we saw that it worked, you know. But yeah, is there any questions about any of that? Yeah.
So what if you had a situation where you weren't allowed to add the same, like we have 2 Seleniums
Good
in
question.
there, so
Now,
do that.
if you had a situation where you couldn't add that, you'd probably have a way of deleting these also. We do not have that on this website.
Not yet.
So you could add one and then delete it in another test, right? To test
Or
the
reset
deleting
your
mechanism.
database in a setup.
Or reset your database. You're not going to necessarily be doing this on a production website. Maybe, maybe not. Usually you have a regress, you know, a stage environment where you're running all your tests on, stuff like that. So you don't want to necessarily break something with testing in your production environments, but you could do that.
Because you have a setup in the teardown, so you could just log into SQLite directly and
You could.
make 'em-
You could log in directly and delete there. I was doing it with SQLite browser earlier and deleting them out of there. Do we want to try to run
Automated
around?
testing, manual teardown.
Right.
That's right.
Automated testing.
I gotta manually reset everything now because I ran my automated tests.
So if we wanted to write a test ourselves, we can. I was thinking we could test this page if you wanted to do it. If there's something you guys want to test on here, we can, or we can call
That
it
page
good if
looks
it's
really good. I've got
Best
Mhm.
page ever.
So, I mean, theoretically, so our next test, we added this in here, right? So then we could do another test where we go to this page now, so it's a separate page, and we can test if that exists on here now, right? And then after that, we can test a delete method on it to see if the delete works or something, right? Or change, maybe we want to change our vote or something, you know. Eventually there's going to be voting on here or whatever. You can do all that kind of stuff. So that's basic. They can get way more advanced, but that's a basic look at it. So yes.
What is the purpose of testing?
What's the purpose of testing?
warm fuzzies. Just kidding.
So this is
It makes your development harder because then you have to go back and fix your tests that you broke.
true, but it's good to know when you broke things that you weren't changing. And that's what this kind of is a regression testing type of a thing, right? So if you change a web page somewhere and you change that first page and it does something different, and it comes to this page and it's different and it breaks this now, you don't have to test manually every single aspect of your website, right? Because all your automated tests will do that for you. I don't know.
It's much better to, fix stuff you broke all at once instead of like over the course of several weeks and having somebody get mad every time they discover something that broke. It does feel like a lot more work to like fix it all at once, but
There's some format out
it's
there
much better with the customer
to predict
relations.
bugs after so many lines of code. Also, this is their factor.
It was a rhetorical question.
10.
It was a loaded question.
Do people use Selenium to like do like automated web form like filling out and stuff like that?
I suppose you could use
repeat
it.
the question. We need to get in that habit.
Do people use Selenium for automatic form creations and things like that, right?
Yeah, like automated web crawling.
So yeah.
Submitting comments on blogs.
So
Voting.
Spam.
the answer, I guess, is yes, obviously you could, because you can traverse a website, right? I don't know if people do, because there are other crawling tools out there, right?
Yeah.
That people might use, but you very well could. And it's not like you're limited to your websites. I mean, anything that's public facing you can access, right? As long as you can log into the site or something, right? So you can write tests for anything you want. Now, if you're writing a Python, it's set up as a unit test. So if you wanted to, crawl around and add things as a unit test, sure, but it's set up in the testing layout. Not that you have to do it that way, I suppose.
Would you mind showing us a test that fails?
Sure. That's easy enough to do. We can just go up here and change it to Firefox.
What IDE are you using? Sublime?
Yeah. Proceeds all pretty. Got my pilot working for Python 3. See, it's a different browser this time. The first test works fine, right? This one fails to shut down. It throws an error. So, there you go. There's an error. You could print
So the
stuff
test
too.
didn't fail, it just the code failed.
In the end, there's an exception thrown, so the test failed.
That's why it says at the bottom, failed.
Failed with one error. So the 2 tests ran, 1 error was found, right? So that means our first test was probably okay. And you can trace it down if you want, but it's unexpected error, alert text none. I don't know. Firefox works fine until a while, I don't know. Maybe if we get rid of that refresh. Try that. With the images, I was capturing the form filled out and then a refresh with the form not filled out and the new item added is what I was doing with that. There you go. It was
Got
a
it.
refresh that was causing it. So successful, but it took 8.
Now we know why you did it.
So that took 8.74 seconds, and the Chrome one took 3.82. Most of that, I think, is in the initial splash loading of the browser itself. Where I think there's a way to do Firefox without that stuff, and you can do that. But
You can create a new default profile and launch it with that profile, so it won't have any plugins and stuff like that. That helps it. And you can also run it without actually opening any window at all.
I like to see the little things you put out. But yeah, that would be good too. For testing where you're not looking at it, I wouldn't need a window to pop up, right? But yeah. So yeah.
Thank you, Brett.